The moment the icy river water filled my nostrils, I thought my life was over. When I opened my eyes again, there were no pristine white walls of a hospital, nor the pungent smell of Lysol, only the musty smell of earth mixed with straw. A few strands of cobwebs hung from the dilapidated beams, and the drafty window frames were covered with yellowed old Korean paper. Intermittent arguing could be heard outside. "Jenny, it's not that I'm forcing you, but don't you know about the new policy that just came out from above? All males who are 18 years old must get married this year. There are only 3 households in the village that are allocated to your nephew Shinyi. If you don't let him choose, are you going to send him to the army to die?" The speaker was Chin Kwan, the village head, whose voice was rough and carried an authoritative tone that left no room for argument. I sat up, my body aching, as a memory that wasn't mine churned violently in my mind. The old Liang dynasty was collapsing, chaos was imminent. I had somehow transmigrated from an outdoor training instructor in the 21st century to this remote, dilapidated village after falling into the water. The original owner of this body was also named Xingyi. His parents had died in war a few years earlier, leaving him and his second uncle, Xinjiani, to depend on each other. Outside the door, second uncle Xinjiani trembled with rage. He slammed his fist on the stone bench in the yard and roared, "Chin Kwan! Tell me honestly, what kind of situation are those 3 families in? The 2 sisters sent by the eldest and second sons are as thin as reeds, they could be blown away by a strong wind. They don't even have a decent piece of coarse cloth to wear. Not to mention there's a widow with a baby in tow. Shinyi has only just turned 18 this year. To force all 3 of them on him at the same time is practically killing my nephew. I beg you to give me 6 months' grace, until after the autumn harvest." "Grace period?" Chin Kwan sneered, interrupting Xinjiani. "The higher-ups are pressing hard. The bigwigs in the county are keeping an eye on the household registers in each village." "Enough nonsense. Shinyi must take over these 3 people today. If you dare to disobey, not only will Shinyi be arrested and sent to hard labor, but your Shin family will also have this dilapidated house confiscated." The arguing in the courtyard stopped abruptly. Xinjiani's legs went weak, and he almost knelt on the ground. Although he was usually stubborn, in this chaotic world, the government was the law, and ordinary people were like weeds. Where was there any room for reason? Just as I took a deep breath, preparing to push open the door and face all of this, a crisp ding sounded in my mind. A completely emotionless, mechanical, synthesized voice exploded clearly in my ears. Host detected as near-death awakening. Family/relative system is binding. Binding successful. New player quest issued. In this chaotic world, only by gathering people and expanding the family can one survive. Please immediately accept the 3 women of marriageable age assigned to you in the village, twin sisters Lin Shui and Lin Xuan, and the widow Su Yunyan with her daughter, and complete the blind marriage. Mission rewards: unlock unlimited storage space, receive a beginner's gift pack, containing a contract for 10,000 acres of fertile land, 100 gene of high-yield crop seeds, a number of superior livestock, 3 tiger power pills, Grandmaster weapon mastery, a complete set of military-grade steel weapons, advanced hunting skills, and a military heavy crossbow with unlimited bolts. System? As a seasoned reader of modern online novels, I was stunned for only half a second before a surge of joy welled up inside me. A miraculous escape from dire straits, the cheat code is always there. With a creak, I pushed open the dilapidated wooden door and stepped out. The blinding sunlight streamed into the courtyard. My second uncle, Xinjiani, stood there, his face filled with grief, while the village head, Chin Kwan, stood with his hands behind his back, giving me a forced, fleshy smile. In the shadows of a corner of the courtyard stood 3 huddled figures. 2 young girls huddled together, their clothes tattered, their faces pale and thin, their eyes filled with terror and despair. Beside them stood a woman, tightly embracing a 2 or 3-year-old girl who was crying from hunger. Though tears streamed down the woman's face, her expression revealed a stubbornness and resignation. "You're awake?" Xinjiani rushed forward when he saw me come out, his eyes red and his voice low. Don't listen to this old man's nonsense. At worst, your second uncle will risk his old life to take you to escape into the deep mountains and forests tonight. Looking at the wrinkles around my second uncle's eyes and his graying temples, a warm feeling welled up inside me. In this chaotic world where human life is as cheap as grass, my second uncle truly protected me. I patted my second uncle's thin shoulder, looked at Chen Quan, and then said loudly, "No need to run away, Chen village chief. It's just a marriage, right? I, Xin Yi, will take all three of them." Upon hearing this, the courtyard fell into a deathly silence. Chen Quan was stunned, seemingly not expecting me to agree so readily. The threatening words he had prepared stuck in his throat. He looked me up and down, making sure I wasn't talking nonsense, before laughing sarcastically. "Good lad, you've got guts. No wonder you're from the Shin family. Since you've willingly accepted, then this contract will be signed today. From now on, those three, along with that child, are your family, Shin Ye's family. If you don't serve them well, or dare to abandon them halfway, don't blame the government for being ruthless." After Chen Quan finished speaking, he took out a rough piece of straw paper from his pocket, forcibly pulled my hand over, smeared it with red mud and pressed my fingerprint on it. Then, as if avoiding a plague, he said, "Hold the ceremony of simple tea and rice in 3 days," and hurriedly turned and walked out of the courtyard. With Chen Quan gone, only a few of us remained in the courtyard. Xinjiani was trembling with anger. He pointed at my nose and yelled, "Are you out of your mind, Di? Do you know what you're doing? Those are the mouths of a whole family to feed. You're starving yourself, and now you're bringing in 3 more useless burdens. You're pushing yourself into a fire pit." Upon hearing the word burden, the twin sisters in the corner trembled violently, burying their heads even lower. Large tears streamed down the elder sister, Lin Shui's, soaking the dry, cracked earth at her feet. The widow Su Yunyang bit her lip, hugging the little girl in her arms even tighter, and whispered, "Young Master Shin, if you feel that we, mother and daughter, have burdened you, we can simply leave. We would never dare to burden you and your uncle. Second uncle, sister-in-law Su, don't worry." I took a deep breath, my tone calm but with an undeniable strength. "Now that the government's contract has been signed, from today onwards, they are my wives and family, not a burden. In chaotic times, everyone has a breath of air. Since I dared to take on this responsibility, I naturally have the ability to support everyone." Xinjiani looked at me, opened his mouth, but seeing my clear eyes and resolute expression, he couldn't say anything to refute me for a moment. In the end, he could only sigh heavily, flick his sleeves, and walk back into the house. Seeing that my second uncle acquiesced, I turned around and looked at the 3 unfortunate people who were about to become my wife and daughters, and softened my tone. "Let's go inside, it's windy outside." That night, a dim oil lamp was lit in the dilapidated hut. Xinjiani went back to the west room to sleep early. In the east room, I and the 3 women sat in silence. A sense of oppression and unease filled the air. I sat on the edge of the bed, and with a thought, I brought up the system interface in my mind. The new player gift packs have all been distributed. Would you like to claim them now? Extract! I silently chanted in my mind. In an instant, I felt my hands sink slightly, and a massive flow of information surged into my mind. It was a master-level mastery of weapons, advanced hunting skills, and countless techniques for gunplay and wilderness survival. It was as if I had practiced these things in hundreds of life-or-death battles, and my muscle memory for them was incredibly deep. At the same time, a faintly glowing infinite storage space appeared deep within my consciousness. Inside, land deeds for thousands of acres of fertile land were neatly stacked, as well as mountains of various high-yield crop seeds, dozens of plump and strong breeds of cattle and sheep, dozens of sets of gleaming military-grade steel weapons, and a heavy military crossbow that shone with a cold light, along with an inexhaustible supply of specially made crossbow bolts. At the very center of these supplies lay 3 tiger power pills that emitted a faint medicinal fragrance. Without hesitation, I made an excuse to go to the kitchen to check, and took out a Tiger Power pill from my storage space. I crushed it and mixed it into the half pot of thin rice porridge left over from the day. I also secretly took out a small bag of fine white flour and a few pounds of good smoked meat from my storage space and hid them in the corner of the stove. When a bowl of warm porridge was placed on the table, Lin Shui, Lin Xuan, and Su Yunyang were all stunned. This was no ordinary porridge. It contained not only fine wheat flour but also a subtle aroma of meat. In a time when even tree bark was being gnawed away, this food was an absolute luxury. Eat up. From today onwards, you will never go hungry again in this house. I pushed the bowl in front of them, my voice gentle. Su Yunyang looked at me, her eyes slightly red, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she only nodded, choking back tears, and began feeding her drowsy, hungry baby daughter. The twin sisters also wolfed down their food. As the warm porridge went down their throats, the Tiger Power pill took effect instantly, transforming into a warm current that flowed through their limbs. A healthy blush gradually appeared on their originally pale and thin cheeks. As I watched their brows gradually relax, I leaned against the doorframe, gazing at the pitch-black night sky. This is just the first step. Qin Quan's coercion, the villagers' disdain, and the cruelty of the impending chaos are only just beginning. Those Black Wind Stronghold bandits who harmed the original owner's parents, and the local tyrants entrenched in the town, Xinyi, will settle this blood feud one by one. The next morning, just as dawn was breaking, I pushed open the door, slung the cold military crossbow over my shoulder, and tucked a steel dagger into my waistband, then strode out of the courtyard. Xinjiani happened to come out of the house and was shocked to see me dressed like this. "Yi, where are you going? This deep mountain forest has been quite dangerous lately. Those ruthless bandits from Black Wind Village often roam around. Aren't you going to your death?" "Second uncle, wait for my good news at home." I turned around and grinned at him. "I'm bringing meat back for lunch today to cook a decent meal for the family." After saying that, ignoring Xinjiani's anxious calls behind me, I walked towards the vast mountains behind the village without looking back. A mountain breeze, carrying a chilly edge, brushed against my face. I stepped on the withered branches and fallen leaves, making a soft rustling sound. The deep mountains were eerily quiet in the early morning. Ordinary people, struggling to make a living, had long since hunted down most of the birds and beasts in the surrounding areas. But relying on the advanced hunting skills I had just acquired, I didn't hesitate for a moment, heading straight into the depths of the mountains. The Tiger Power pill's effects transformed into a continuous flow of heat within my body, making my senses several times more acute with each breath. In less than half an hour, a faint fishy and muttony smell filled the air. I stopped and listened intently. The bushes ahead shook violently, accompanied by heavy, panting breaths, and a wild boar, the size of a calf, suddenly emerged. The beast had 2 gleaming tusks and bloodshot eyes. It had clearly been driven out to the outskirts in search of food by hunger. If it were the original owner of this body, encountering such a ferocious beast would have meant nothing more than fleeing in terror. But now, I stand here, not even my heart skips a beat. Upon seeing a stranger, the wild boar roared, pawed at the ground, and charged straight at me with a foul stench. This beast's impact was incredibly powerful. If I were hit squarely, I'd surely break bones and tendons. I moved when the wild boar was less than 3 steps away from me. My body instinctively slid half a step to the side, the movement as fast as lightning. At the same time, I drew the military-grade steel dagger from my waist and, using the momentum of the wild boar's charge, precisely stabbed it into the vital spot on the side of its neck. Pfft! The sharp steel blade pierced through to the hilt without any resistance, and warm blood gushed out instantly. The wild boar let out a mournful cry, its massive body charging forward more than 10 meters before crashing heavily into an old tree. It twitched a few times and then died completely. I pulled out the dagger, flicked off the blood, and was extremely satisfied with the system's reward. This master-level weapon proficiency and physical attributes were far beyond what ordinary people could achieve. Just as I was about to put the wild boar into my infinite storage space, a series of chaotic hoofbeats and rude curses suddenly came from the dense forest not far away. "Boss, this godforsaken place is so poor that even the tree bark has been gnawed off. Do you think we brothers can really make a profit? If you asked me, we haven't even finished dealing with that deal on the mountain road a few days ago. Why don't we just go back to the village and have some drinks and meat?" A sharp, sarcastic voice rang out, followed by a gruff snort. "Shut up! Enough nonsense. We've got word that a batch of refugees were recently distributed to the nearby villages. It's not much, but every little bit helps. Behave yourselves, or you'll spoil the chief's mood." Upon hearing the words, "Black Wind Village," my eyes narrowed, and I hid behind a sturdy pine tree. I'd recognize these people even if they were ashes. The original owner's parents died at the hands of these bandits from Black Wind Stronghold. They ransacked the entire village back then, and if it weren't for my second uncle risking his life to protect me, I wouldn't be alive today. Who would have thought we'd run into each other in these deep mountains and forests today? System task triggered. A blood feud must be avenged. The system has detected that the host has encountered enemies, Black Wind Stronghold henchmen, who murdered their parents. The host is requested to eliminate them all to appease their spirits. Task rewards: Overlord Spear Technique, 50 taels of silver. The system's mechanical voice rang out in my mind at just the right moment. I sneered and took out the military heavy crossbow from my storage space. The cold, mechanical feel of it in my hand, along with its built-in unlimited bolts, meant I didn't have to worry about ammunition. Through the dense foliage, 5 Black Wind Stronghold bandits, clad in leather armor and with menacing faces, swaggered over. They carried blood-stained broadswords and their faces were filled with ferocity. "Hey! Boss, look over there, what a huge wild boar. It just died recently, its blood is still warm." One of the bandits, with sharp eyes, spotted the wild boar on the ground and immediately shouted greedily. "Haha, it seems the heavens have opened their eyes today. Not only can we get a fat pig for free, but we might also be able to snatch a few tender young women from the village to have some fun." The one-eyed bandit leader grinned as he stepped forward and kicked the wild boar's carcass. Just as they lowered their guard and gathered together to examine their prey, I pulled the trigger of my heavy crossbow. Call out. Without much of a whooshing sound, a chilling glint of light instantly tore through the air. The one-eyed man at the forefront felt a chill in his chest. Looking down, he saw a steel crossbow bolt pierce through him, the immense impact pinning him to a tree trunk behind him. He didn't even have time to scream before his eyes widened and he died instantly. Enemy attack. Ambushes. The remaining 4 bandits were terrified. They frantically raised their broadswords, huddled together back to back, and looked around frantically. "The boss is dead. Who was it? Show yourself." One of the tall, thin bandits roared hoarsely, his voice filled with barely concealed fear. I slowly walked out from behind the tree, holding the loaded military crossbow in my hand, my gaze as calm as if I were looking at 4 corpses. "It's you? A greenhorn?" The bandits were taken aback when they saw me alone, then grinned maliciously. "Damn it, so he's just a hunter who doesn't know his own limits. Brothers, kill him, skin him alive, and feed him to the dogs." Before he finished speaking, 4 men brandishing long swords charged straight at him. Without batting an eye, I pulled the trigger. Whoosh! 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 3 muffled thuds followed, and 3 crossbow bolts shot out in a triangular formation. The 2 bandits at the forefront didn't even see the trajectory of the projectiles before they were struck in the throat and heart simultaneously, screaming as they fell into pools of blood. The remaining 2 were terrified. Their legs went weak, and their hands gripping the knives trembled violently. They were used to bullying others in this village area. They had never witnessed such horrific methods of killing. They hadn't even touched their opponent's clothes, yet 3 of their companions had been killed. "Run! Run!" In the end, the 2 men completely broke down, threw down their broadswords, and turned to flee into the depths of the dense forest. I snorted coldly, put the heavy crossbow back into my storage space, and casually took out a fine steel spear. I suddenly exerted force in my arm muscles and threw the spear like a javelin. Pfft! The spear, accompanied by a whistling sound, pierced the back of the last bandit in an instant, and with its momentum undiminished, pinned both of them to the ground. The last man was terrified, his knees buckled, and he collapsed to the ground, the stench of urine filling the air. He turned around and frantically called out to me, begging for mercy. "Young hero, spare me! Young hero, spare me! Black Wind Stronghold forced us to do it, we were just following orders." I walked up to him, looking down at him. "Does your Black Wind Stronghold remember my parents' names?" The bandit shuddered, raising his head to look at me in terror. You're that kid from the Shin family?" "No. Impossible, back then you clearly. I survived back then so that I could send you to hell today." The words had barely left my lips when a flash of cold light appeared. I showed no mercy and cleanly ended the life of this last person. After dealing with those 5 scumbags, I stored their corpses, along with the wild boar on the ground, in my storage space. Just as I was about to leave, a deep, muffled tiger roar suddenly echoed from the depths of the distant mountains. Roar! The roar was like rolling thunder, shaking the remaining snow off the branches and filling the air with a suffocating pressure of the king of beasts. Immediately afterwards, a massive white tiger, as large as a small mountain, slowly emerged from the depths of the dense forest. A striking black, king, character adorned its forehead, its eyes gleamed with a chilling light, and its fur was pure white, without a single blemish. This was no ordinary mountain beast, but a gigantic, white-browed tiger that had come to life. Even with my Grandmaster-level strength, I couldn't help but feel a slight chill when facing this beast. The white-browed tiger had clearly noticed me. It growled, pushed off the ground with its front paws, and pounced forward with a violent, foul gust of wind. Its speed was so fast that it was almost impossible to see with the naked eye, and its massive shadow instantly enveloped me. It's too late to run. At the critical moment, a thought flashed through my mind, and I directly aimed the spatial dimension at the oncoming tiger, mentally shouting, "Withdraw!" Buzz! A strange ripple spread through the air. The white-browed tiger, which had been displaying its ferocious nature, suddenly felt the scenery before it changed. Before it could even make a pounce, it vanished into thin air and was forcibly stored in my unlimited storage space. Within the space, a world unto itself was formed. As soon as the extremely ferocious white-browed tiger entered, it was as if it had crashed into an invisible wall. It roared and charged wildly inside, but it could not shake the space in the slightest. I let out a long sigh of relief and wiped the fine beads of sweat from my forehead. This storage space can not only hold inanimate objects, but it can also forcefully suppress even such terrifying beasts in critical moments. It's practically the ultimate artifact for killing at home, robbing, and saving your own life. Having resolved all the troubles, I didn't linger. Carrying my bountiful harvest, I strode towards the village. As the afternoon sun streamed into the Shin family's courtyard, I pushed open the gate and unloaded the hundreds of kilograms of wild game onto the center of the yard. The heavy thud made the entire house tremble slightly. The twin sisters, who were picking vegetables in the yard, were startled. When they looked up and saw the wild boar that looked like a small mountain, they were so shocked that they covered their mouths and couldn't speak for a long time. Hearing the commotion, Shinjiani ran out of the house. When he saw me standing unharmed in front of a pile of prey, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. D'ye? You brought back the whole mountain? This? How much meat is that? Suyunyang also came out of the house, looking at the prey on the ground with shock and a deep sense of awe in her eyes. I dusted off my hands and said in a relaxed tone, "Second uncle, sister-in-law, I said I'd make sure we had meat at home today. Not only meat, but tomorrow I'm going to throw a big banquet, invite everyone in the village, and make this wedding a grand and lively affair." Shinjiani opened his mouth, about to advise me not to flaunt my wealth, but seeing my calm and confident eyes, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. He slapped his thigh and gritted his teeth, saying, "Fine. Since you've got the ability, your second uncle will go all out today and help you organize this happy occasion. However, the tree may wish to remain still, but the wind will not cease." Just as we were discussing the details of tomorrow's wedding banquet, a series of extremely arrogant shouts and curses suddenly came from outside the courtyard, accompanied by violent banging on the door. "Xingyi inside, listen up! Break down the door right now! Master Zhao's butler is here, get out and greet him!" The pounding on the gate outside the courtyard grew more and more urgent, accompanied by vulgar and offensive shouts, making the old wooden door creak and groan. Shinjiani's face turned deathly pale instantly, and he almost dropped the kitchen knife he had just picked up. He lowered his voice, his tone filled with fear and urgency. "It's the steward of the wealthy Zhao Wang family. Di Yi, that old bastard, is used to running rampant in the village. He must have heard that you brought back such a big wild boar and brought people to forcibly take it. What are we going to do?" Su Yunyang was also terrified, her face turning pale. She instinctively shielded her daughter tightly behind her, her frail body trembling slightly. The twin sisters were even paler, tears welling in their eyes. In this chaotic world where clan power was deeply entrenched and the government was virtually powerless, tyrants like Zhao Wang, who relied on local strongmen to bully and oppress, treated the common people with the power of life and death. In the past, if any family in the village had the good fortune to acquire something of value, 9 times out of 10 it would end up in Zhao Wang's hands. I patted Xinjiani on the shoulder, my eyes calm and steady, and said, "Second uncle, don't panic. With me here, the sky won't fall." After saying that, I walked to the gate and pulled open the wooden door, which was not securely bolted. 3 men stood outside the door. The one in the lead, dressed in a faded silk robe, twirled 2 shiny walnuts in his hand. He was none other than Lu Fu, Zhao Wang's arrogant steward. Behind him followed 2 burly thugs, each carrying a stick, their faces full of menacing features. Lu Fu was about to kick the door again when it suddenly opened, nearly tripping over it. He steadied himself, gave me a sidelong glance, and snorted arrogantly. "Xingyi, you're something else! I heard you went into the mountains today and hunted a formidable wild boar? All right, don't blame your uncle for not looking after you. Master Zhao is looking for some game tonight. You take that boar to the Zhao residence to offer to him. That'll show you're a sensible kid. Besides..." Lu Fu paused, a sinister smile spreading across his face. "Considering that your Shen family has added 3 members this year, the village rent will double starting tomorrow. This is also Master Zhao's intention. After all, you peasants have some skills now." These words were extremely arrogant, not only blatantly stealing our prey, but also trying to exploit us even more. Xinjiani in the courtyard was trembling with anger. He gritted his teeth and wanted to rush out to argue, but I stopped him with my hand. I looked at Lu Fu, a playful smile curving my lips, and said slowly, "Steward Lu, you're quite arrogant. You think you can just take away the game I worked so hard to hunt without any real knowledge, and even demand double the rent? What, does this village belong to the Zhao family now? You don't even care about the law anymore?" Seeing that I not only didn't bow and scrape in gratitude, but dared to talk back to his face, Lu Fu's face darkened. He stuffed the walnuts in his hand into his pocket, pointed at my nose, and cursed. "Law! In this area, Master Zhao's word is law. You little brat, don't push your luck. Let me tell you, you're giving me this wild boar today, whether you like it or not. I'm not only taking the wild boar away, I'm also going to smash up this lousy yard of yours, you believe me?" "I don't believe it." I stopped smiling, my tone as cold as ice shards in the dead of winter. "You've gone too far." Lu Fu shouted angrily, waving his hand and yelling at the 2 thugs behind him. "Get him! Break both of this kid's legs, drag him inside and search him. Take away all the wild boar and valuables." The 2 burly men grinned and responded, swinging their thick wooden sticks at my face with a whooshing sound. Several villagers passing by watched this scene from afar, all terrified and silent, hiding far away, not daring to utter a sound, for fear of getting caught in the crossfire. In their eyes, I was at most a hunter with some brute strength. How could I possibly be a match for the vicious dogs raised by the Zhao family? However, I didn't even blink when faced with the wooden stick coming at me. Just as the stick was about to touch my nose, I dodged to the side like a ghost, and at the same time, my right hand shot out like lightning, accurately grabbing one of the attacker's wrists. Snap! With a crisp cracking sound, the thug's sinister smile froze instantly, followed by an extremely shrill scream. Ah, my hand! I seized the wooden stick from his hand and swung it backhand, smashing it heavily into the chest of another thug. The burly man, who weighed over 170 pounds, was sent flying more than 2 meters away by the blow, crashing heavily against the courtyard wall, spitting out a mouthful of blood, and immediately losing consciousness. The entire exchange lasted no more than 2 seconds, and the two usually arrogant and domineering servants were rendered powerless in the blink of an eye. Lu Fu's arrogant expression froze instantly, and the walnut in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter, and shattered. He looked at me in terror, his legs trembling uncontrollably, and he took several steps back. You dare to lay a hand on me? Do you know you're hitting Master Zhao's men? You're courting death. Holding the blood-stained wooden stick, I approached him step by step. Who is Master Zhao? All I know is that anyone who comes to my house to steal things will pay the price. What do you want to do? Don't come any closer. Help! Lu Fu was so frightened that he turned around and stumbled as he tried to run away. I snorted coldly, and the wooden stick in my hand flew out, striking Lu Fu precisely in the back of the knee. Thump! Lu Fu screamed, his knees slamming heavily onto the hard yellow earth. The excruciating pain from his shattered kneecaps distorted even his scream. I walked up to him, looking down at him, and stepped on his shoulder, coldly saying, Go back and tell Zhao Wang that if he wants a wild boar, he'll have to come and get it himself. Get out! Lu Fu was in so much pain that tears and snot streamed down his face. He didn't dare utter a single harsh word. He scrambled out of the Shin family's courtyard, helping another thug along, and fled like a stray dog. The courtyard returned to silence. Xinjiani stared at me in disbelief, unable to recover for a long time. You beat up the Zhao family? This has completely stirred up a hornet's nest. That treacherous and cunning Zhao Wang will definitely not let this go. He will definitely bring more people to retaliate. Su Yunyang stepped forward with a worried expression and softly advised. Shin Lang, why don't we take our things and escape tonight? A wise man doesn't take unnecessary risks. I shook my head, staring calmly at the courtyard gate, and said in a deep voice, Escape? Where can we escape to? In this chaotic world, there is war and famine everywhere. Taking a step back is like falling into an abyss. Since Zhao Wang is courting death, tomorrow's wedding banquet is the best opportunity for me to send him on his way. System task triggered. A bully is harassing and harming the villagers. During tomorrow night's wedding banquet, please cleverly take advantage of the situation to eliminate the bully Zhao Wang and successfully cover your tracks. Task reward, Overlord Spear Technique, 50 taels of silver. The system's voice rang out in my mind at just the right moment, coinciding with my thoughts. The following evening, the Shin family courtyard was brightly decorated. Although there was no grand red wedding sedan chair, 3 large tables were set up in the courtyard for a feast. The tables were laden with fragrant wild boar meat and various delicacies from the mountains and the sea. The rich aroma of meat wafted far and wide along the dilapidated courtyard wall, attracting the attention of the villagers. Although the villagers were wary of the Zhao family's power, the irresistible temptation of meat and Xinye's formidable strength eventually spurred many to attend the wedding banquet. Xinjiani busied himself attending to the villagers, a smile on his face, but a lingering worry remained in his eyes. After several rounds of drinks and several dishes, the courtyard gradually became lively, with the sounds of clinking glasses rising and falling. As night deepened and everyone was drinking and making a ruckus, I excused myself to change clothes and quietly slipped into a side room. Then, with a swift movement and under the cover of darkness, I silently scaled the courtyard wall and headed straight for Zhao Wang's mansion at the east end of the village. Zhao Wang was known for his tyrannical and domineering ways. His mansion was built with blue bricks and black tiles, surrounded by high walls and a large courtyard. At this moment, the Zhao mansion was brightly lit, and the sounds of singing, dancing, and drinking games could be faintly heard. Using the agility granted by my advanced hunting skills, I easily scaled the high wall, evaded the night patrolling servants, and crept into the shadows of a woodshed in the backyard. After confirming that no one was around, I had a sudden thought and mentally shouted, "Release the white-browed tiger!" Boom! With a deep, muffled growl, the enormous, ferocious white tiger instantly appeared on the lawn in the backyard of the Zhao residence. Having been confined in the storage space for a day, it was brimming with rage. As soon as it emerged, its massive body reared up abruptly, unleashing a deafening roar. Roar! The tiger's roar was like a bolt from the blue, instantly shattering the peaceful revelry of the Zhao mansion. The entire Zhao residence was thrown into chaos, filled with screams, cries, and the sound of shattering utensils. "Oh no! There's a monster! A giant white tiger has broken into the mansion! Run! Master, help me!" Under the cover of the chaotic night, I hid in the shadows and observed coldly. The white-browed tiger was a ferocious beast with spiritual powers. Under my mental control and guidance, its scarlet eyes instantly locked onto the direction of the main hall. With all its might, it charged straight into the hall, bringing with it a violent, foul stench. Inside the main hall, Zhao Wang, who was drinking and making merry with his beautiful concubine, heard the commotion and stood up cursing. Just then, a white tiger as big as a small mountain pounced on him. Ah! Zhao Wang didn't even have time to let out a proper scream before the tiger shattered his sternum with a single blow, and then snapped his neck in two. The whole process was breathtakingly fast. This local tyrant died instantly. Having achieved my goal, I once again had a thought, and before the tiger could harm any innocent bystanders, I put it back into my infinite storage space. Having done all this, I left no trace. Taking advantage of the darkness, I quickly scaled the wall and quietly returned to the Shen family's courtyard. That night, news that Zhao Wang had been mauled to death by a tiger that broke into his mansion in the deep mountains spread like wildfire throughout the village. Everyone was horrified, but I sat under the flickering candlelight, picked up a glass of cheap wine, and drank it all in one gulp. Ding! Congratulations, host, on completing the mission. Eliminate the bully Zhao Wang. The reward, Overlord Spear Technique, has been issued. A cool sensation swept through his mind, and countless insights into the exquisite marksmanship instantly flowed into Xinye's body, as if he had been practicing diligently for decades. The moonlight, like water, spilled into the courtyard. I gripped the gleaming steel spear in my hand and, facing the night wind, began to silently practice the Overlord Spear Technique in the courtyard. The night was as dark as ink, and the moonlight in the courtyard was half hidden by a few wisps of clouds, giving off a cold and desolate feeling. I stood in the center of the courtyard, my hands gripping the steel spear that gleamed with a cold light. As the memories of the Overlord Spear Technique fully merged into my mind, my breathing gradually became one with the surrounding night breeze. The spear in my hands no longer seemed like a cold weapon, but rather an extension of my body. Call! I suddenly exerted force in my arm, and the spear drew a perfect arc through the night sky, accompanied by a deep whistling sound. In an instant, the spear's shadows surged like dragons emerging from the sea, impenetrable, each thrust precise, ruthless, and exuding an unparalleled domineering power. In this chaotic world devoid of law and order, strength is the only passport. Zhao Wang's death was just the beginning. The storm outside would only intensify. After finishing the last move, I slowly stopped, regulated my internal energy, and felt my bones creaking faintly. My strength had improved even more than before. The lights inside the room had long been turned off, and Lin Shui and Lin Shuang, along with Su Yunyang and her daughter, were sleeping peacefully in their warm beds. After several days of recuperation and the nourishment from the Tiger Power pill, their complexions had completely recovered from their initial sallowness and regained their vitality. The next morning, just as dawn was breaking, I harnessed the ox cart I had borrowed from the village and carefully loaded the several 100 pounds of wild game and a fine white tiger skin onto it. Yi, things aren't peaceful in the county town right now. I heard there are refugees and defeated soldiers everywhere. You have to be very careful when you go there. My second uncle, Xinjiani, said with a worried expression as he straightened my collar. I patted my second uncle's hand and said with a smile, "Don't worry, second uncle, I know what I'm doing. When I come back from selling the mountain produce, I'll buy a few acres of good paddy fields for the family." After saying goodbye to my second uncle and my wife and daughters, I drove the ox cart along the rugged mountain road straight to the county town. When I arrived in the county town, the checks at the city gate were several times stricter than before. Several yamen runners in tattered uniforms were holding spears and arrogantly questioning the people coming in and out. After paying a few copper coins as an entrance tax, I was able to drive my ox cart into the town without any trouble. Although the county town was more prosperous than the village, a sense of impending doom hung in the air. The streets were lined with refugees who had fled from the north, huddled in corners, their clothes tattered. I didn't linger and went straight to the largest pharmacy and grain store in town. The shopkeeper's eyes lit up at the sight of the high-quality wild game and the rare, intact white tiger skin, and he bought it all on the spot at an extremely high price. With my heavy purse in my pocket, I not only exchanged it for a large quantity of fine white rice and flour, but also conveniently purchased a large amount of salt and cotton cloth. As I was on my way back, a sudden commotion broke out on the street ahead. "Get out of the way! All of you, get out of the way! If you startle the nobleman's horses, you'll lose your heads!" With a boastful shout, several bandits from Black Wind's stronghold, riding tall horses, swaggered into the town streets. The leader, a scarred man, held a ghost-headed knife horizontally, and two young women, bound hand and foot and struggling desperately, were carried on the horse's back. The surrounding people were terrified and screamed in panic, scattering in all directions, not daring to step forward to stop them. My gaze sharpened, and with my keen eyesight, I instantly recognized the two bound women. One of them was dressed in a luxurious silk dress, and although her face was full of terror, her brows exuded an air of nobility. The other was her personal maid. System mission triggered. Black Wind's stronghold is rampant, abducting innocent families in the streets. Host, please immediately take action to wipe them out and rescue Viscountine Shaw's family. Mission reward, 100 taels of gold, horsemanship mastery. The system's mechanical voice rang out in my mind at just the right moment. I sneered, not even bothering with the ox cart, casually tied the reins to a stone post by the roadside, and with a flick of my right hand, the steel spear appeared out of thin air in my hand. "Stop!" I stepped forward, blocking the middle of the street, and stared coldly at the group of arrogant bandits. The scarred man on horseback, seeing someone dare to block his way, pulled on the reins and looked down at me with a sinister grin. Where did this ignorant little beggar come from? Daring to meddle in Black Wind's stronghold's affairs? You're tired of living! The people who killed you! I uttered 4 words expressionlessly. Damn it, he's asking for it! Kill him! Scarface roared in fury, waving his hand to order his 3 henchmen to charge forward. 3 bandits yelled and brandished their machetes, lunging straight at my face. I didn't even lift an eyelid, my spear thrust out like a venomous dragon. Pft! 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 3 muffled thuds followed in quick succession. Before even a fleeting shadow could be seen, 3 bandits simultaneously suffered bloody holes in their throats, fell from their horses, and died instantly. The people on the street and the bandits were all stunned. The scarred man's sinister smile froze instantly, and extreme fear appeared in his eyes. You! Who exactly are you? I didn't answer. I pushed off with my feet and shot into the sky like an arrow, my spear hurtling towards Scarface's face with the whistling wind. Scarface was terrified and desperately swung his knife to block. When? With a piercing clang of metal against metal, the ghost-headed saber in Scarface's hand was flung from his grasp by the immense force, his hand split open and bleeding profusely. Before he could react, the cold tip of the spear was already firmly positioned half an inch in front of his throat. "Spare me! Spare me!" Scarface's legs went weak, and he wet his pants in fear. With a slight flick of my wrist, the tip of the gun pierced his throat. After dealing with these scoundrels, I used my spear to cut the ropes binding the horse and gently help the woman in the elegant dress down. The woman was still in shock, her face as pale as paper, but when she saw my face clearly, a hint of amazement and gratitude flashed in her eyes. She gave a slight curtsy, her voice soft and trembling. "Thank you for saving my life, brave warrior. I am Yin Shuang. If it weren't for your help, my maid and I would have been killed today." I sheathed my spear and said calmly, "It was nothing, please don't mention it, young lady. We shouldn't linger here. Let's go home." Just as Yin Shuang was about to express her gratitude, the sound of rapid hoofbeats came from the distant street. Dozens of elite soldiers, clad in armor and carrying swords, rushed over under the command of a young general. The general, his face filled with anxiety, immediately dismounted and strode forward to greet Yin Shuang when he saw her unharmed. "Little sister! Are you all right? You scared your brother to death." The young general was none other than Viscount Yin Shuo. He carefully examined Yin Shuang and, seeing that she was unharmed, finally breathed a long sigh of relief. Yin Shuang pointed at me and quickly said, "Brother, thanks to this brave man Shin who intervened in time, he not only killed all the bandits, but also saved me and the maid." Yin Shuo turned his head sharply, and when he saw the gleaming spear in my hand and the scattered corpses of the bandits on the ground, a look of extreme shock flashed in his eyes. He strode up to me, solemnly clasped his hands in a fist and bow, and said with utmost sincerity, "I am Viscount Yin Shuo. Brother Shin, my family will never forget your great kindness today. If there is any need for your service in the future, I, Yin Shuo, will never hesitate." The surrounding people were secretly amazed to see that the dignified Viscount was bowing so respectfully to a country hunter. However, at that moment, a strange, cold laugh suddenly came from outside the crowd. "Oh, I wondered who was committing murder in the street. It turns out to be Viscount Yin." County Magistrate Huang Tong, dressed in his official robes, swaggered over with dozens of constables. His triangular eyes narrowed slightly, and he swept his gaze over me with a sinister look. He coldly snorted, "Viscount Yin, these men may be bandits, but you've dared to commit murder in the streets of the county town. You're showing utter disrespect to me. Guards, seize this audacious thug." Huang Tong had a deep-rooted relationship with the deceased bully Zhao Wang. After Zhao Wang's death, he had been trying to find the real culprit. Today, seeing that I had shown my skills, he immediately became murderous and wanted to kill me on the spot under the pretext of maintaining public order. The atmosphere around them instantly plummeted to freezing point. Yin Shuo's face darkened, and he was about to step forward and angrily rebuke Huang Tong when he saw me smile coldly, not taking this corrupt official seriously at all. The air on the street seemed to freeze at that moment. The onlookers were so frightened that they didn't dare to breathe and retreated in all directions, afraid of being caught in the vortex of officials and powerful figures. Magistrate Huang Tong stood with his hands behind his back, a sinister glint in his triangular eyes. He had long known through intelligence that a peasant named Xinyi outside the city had a deep-seated grudge against Zhao Wang, the local bully who had been killed by a tiger. Although Zhao Wang was dead, the two had many hidden interests at stake. Huang Tong had planned to go to Shin family village to arrest him in a few days when he had some free time, but he never expected to run into him on the street today. "What? Xinyi, you're committing murder in the street. Do you have no respect for the law?" Huang Tong sneered, waving his hand at the constables behind him. "Seize him. If he dares to resist, kill him on the spot." Dozens of fierce-looking constables drew their swords and swarmed around them. Yin Shuo's face instantly darkened to the extreme. He took half a step forward, drew his sword from his waist, and shouted angrily, "Huang Tong, what an arrogant official you are! Brother Shen just saved my sister's life. He is her savior. As the magistrate of a county, instead of thinking of eliminating harm for the people, you are supporting the remnants of Black Wind's stronghold and the tyrants. Believe me or not, I will send a memorial to the capital tomorrow and have you stripped of your official hat." Upon hearing the word capital, Huang Tong's eyes flickered slightly, clearly showing some apprehension about the Viscount's background. But then he thought again. The situation in the capital was currently turbulent, with regional princes stirring up trouble. What could a mere idle Viscount possibly do to him? Besides, the gold and silver jewels that Zhao Wan had given him before his death weren't for nothing. He was determined to avenge this. "Viscount Yin, don't try to intimidate me with your grandstanding." Huang Tong cupped his hands in a forced smile. "I only know the laws of the Great Liang dynasty, which state that princes are subject to the same laws as commoners. This boy committed murder in the street, and the evidence is conclusive. If I don't arrest him, how can I explain this to the people of the county? What a fine set of laws from the Great Liang!" I sneered, slowly stepping out from behind Yin Shuo with my spear in hand, my gaze fixed on Huang Tong like a knife. "Since Lord Huang is so fond of talking about laws, why don't we go to the Yamen court and thoroughly investigate the accounts of Zhao Wang's forcible occupation of fertile land and oppression of the people, and while we're at it, also investigate how much dirty money you received from the Zhao family every year." Upon hearing this, Huang Tong's expression instantly changed. His smug look froze on his face, and a fine layer of cold sweat even appeared on his forehead. He roared, his voice trembling with fear, "Bullshit! Stop spouting nonsense! Guards, hack this man to death!" Just as the constables were about to pounce, Yin Shuo suddenly drew his long sword fully, the tip pointing directly at Huang Tong, exuding a fierce killing intent honed from battle. "Let's see who dares to move! Today, anyone who dares to touch a hair on Brother Shen's head, Yin Shuo, will make them bleed 5 steps away." Seeing the murderous look in Yin Shuo's eyes, Huang Tong weighed his options carefully. He knew that with Yin Shuo protecting him today, a direct confrontation would be futile. He gritted his teeth, glared at me venomously, and flicked his sleeve, coldly snorting. "Fine. Very well. Viscount Yin, Xinyi, you just wait. This isn't over." With that, Huang Tong waved his hand and led a group of disheveled Yamen runners away angrily. With the crisis temporarily averted, Yin Shuo sheathed his sword, turned around, clasped his hands in a fist salute to me, and said, "Brother Shen, please forgive my rudeness. This Huang Tong is corrupt by nature and is in cahoots with the bandits and powerful figures outside the city. Brother Shen, you have embarrassed him today. He will definitely try to trip you up in the future. We must be on guard." I smiled calmly and put away my spear. "Thank you for the reminder, Viscount. You are just a petty scoundrel. If you dare to come, I will find a way to make sure you don't leave alive." Yin Xuan watched me from the side, her beautiful eyes sparkling. The decisiveness she displayed when facing the thugs and the composure she showed when facing the county magistrate were deeply imprinted in her heart. After bidding farewell to Yin Shuo and his sister, I drove the ox cart back to Xinjia village, laden with grain and New Year's goods. The village remained peaceful for the next few days. I took out some of the grain and meat I had bought and distributed it to my second uncle and a few honest and hard-working poor neighbors, earning me a very good reputation. Although my second uncle, Xinyi, vaguely guessed that Zhao Wang's death and the events in the county town were related to me, he only sighed, told me to be careful in everything, and then kept the secret without asking any further questions. A few days later, according to custom, I accompanied my 2 wives, Lin Shui and Lin Xuan, back to their parents' home to visit my mother-in-law. But as soon as they reached the entrance of Linjiao village, they ran into Jiang Erniu, his wife's cousin. Jiang Erniu was a notorious rogue and scoundrel. Not only was he lazy and gluttonous, but he also frequently beat and kicked his wife, Lin Wan. When he saw me, Lin Shui, and Lin Shuang, a glint of greed and malice flashed in his triangular eyes. Hey! Aren't these my two cousins who married poor hunters? What's wrong? They didn't even bring a decent gift when they came back to their parents' home. Do they really think they've climbed the social ladder? Jiang Ernie swayed over and blocked his way, speaking in a sarcastic tone. Lin Shui and Lin Shuang were so frightened that they hid behind me, trembling all over. Seeing this, Jiang Ernie became even more aggressive, pointing his finger at my nose and cursing. Qin Yi, you good-for-nothing who lives off women! You kidnapped my two cousins and didn't even give enough betrothal gifts! If you don't come up with 50 taels of silver today, you can forget about stepping into the Lin family. Otherwise, I'll go to the county government and sue you for abducting women. The surrounding villagers quickly gathered around, pointing and whispering about us. Jiang Ernie was clearly trying to frame me in public and extort money from me by colluding with his clansmen. Just as my eyes turned cold, preparing to teach this fool a lesson, a crisp sound of horses' hooves suddenly came from afar. Whoa! Several fast horses galloped up, led by the brother and sister, Yin Shu and Yin Shuang. They happened to be passing by on business, and saw the scene. Yin Shu dismounted and looked coldly at Jiang Ernie. What a reckless scoundrel! Daring to openly extort and blackmail Brother Shin in broad daylight! Jiang Ernie didn't recognize Yin Shu. Seeing that the other man was dressed smartly, his eyes lit up and he said shamelessly, Who do you think you are? Mind your own business. This Shin Yi kidnapped my cousin and even beat me up. If you don't pay up today, no one can help you. Shut up! Suddenly, a young woman, ragged and covered in injuries, emerged from the crowd. It was Lin Wan, Jiang Ernie's wife. Looking at Jiang Ernie, her eyes were filled with despair and resolute determination. She cried out, Cousin! Don't make false accusations! You not only drink and gamble, but you also beat me every day. A few days ago, you almost beat me to death. If it weren't for Brother Shin's kindness in saving my two cousins, they would have been thrown into the fire by you long ago. You beast, how dare you extort money from me here today? After Lin Wan finished speaking, she was overcome with grief and pulled out a pair of scissors from her bosom, about to slit her own throat. Fortunately, I reacted quickly and stepped forward, snatching the scissors from her and stopping her. The villagers were immediately in an uproar, their eyes filled with contempt and disgust as they looked at Jiang Ernie. Several elders of the Jiang clan trembled with rage. Leaning on their canes, they stepped forward and roared, What a heartless beast! Not only does he abuse his wife, but he also dares to disgrace the family and frame our benefactor. Guards, according to the clan rules, tie this scourge up and beat him to death with sticks. Several young clansmen had long disliked Jiang Ernie, so they rushed forward and tied him up tightly as he lay limp on the ground, enforcing clan rules on the spot. Seeing Lin Wan suffering from abuse and on the verge of collapse, I sighed and, with my mother-in-law's consent, decided to bring her back to the Shin family to live with us. Ding! Detected that the host has taken in the unfortunate woman Lin Wan, further expanding the family population and upgrading the family and relatives system once again. System rewards: 10,000 acres of fertile land, 100 head of high-quality livestock, 5 tiger power pills, and 1,000 taels of silver. The system's voice in my mind bolstered my confidence. However, before I could even settle down at home for a few days, a devastating piece of bad news arrived from the north. The capital has fallen. The Great Liang dynasty collapsed completely, and local warlords seized power, igniting war that swept across the entire country. Countless refugees and defeated soldiers surged towards our county like a tidal wave. That morning, Yin Shu rode hurriedly to the Shin family courtyard. He found me and said in an extremely grave tone, Brother Shin! The capital has fallen, and the rebel army from western Shu is leading tens of thousands of defeated soldiers towards our county. I have already sealed the city gates and am reinforcing the city defenses, stockpiling grain, and conscripting soldiers. But the food in the city is simply not enough to support the tens of thousands of refugees and the garrison. Upon hearing this, I frowned deeply. The safety of my wife, children, elderly parents, and the entire village depended on this. I had to immediately go to the county town to purchase a large quantity of grain. When I arrived in the county town, the city gates were tightly shut, and the city was already in chaos. The grain in the shops had long been sold out, and tens of thousands of defeated Western Shu soldiers were a dark mass outside the city, like a black cloud pressing down on it. To prevent refugees and traders from infiltrating, the city was tightly closed, and no one was allowed to go out or enter. With my wife and children at home and the safety of the villagers in mind, I stood on the towering city wall, looking at the enemy army that covered the mountains and fields outside the city with murderous intent, and then looked at Yin Shuo beside me with a face full of anxiety. I took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Brother Yin, use ropes to lower me down from the city wall." Yin Shuo was shocked. "Brother Shin, have you gone mad? There are tens of thousands of enemy troops outside the city. If you go down alone, it's like a lamb entering a tiger's den. Stop talking nonsense, or it will be too late." My eyes were as firm as iron. Yin Shuo gritted his teeth and immediately ordered his henchmen to tie the heavy hemp rope tightly around my waist and slowly lower me down from the city wall, which was dozens of feet high. The moment their feet touched the ground, dozens of sharp-eyed enemy soldiers from Western Shu surrounded them, yelling and brandishing their long swords. I snorted coldly and swung my spear horizontally. In an instant, blood splattered, and several enemy soldiers lay dead on the spot before they could even scream. Facing the frenzied encirclement of hundreds of enemy soldiers, I wielded my silver spear and fought like a god of war descending upon the enemy ranks. My overlord spear technique was pushed to its limit. The spear's shadow was like a thunderbolt, leaving limbs and severed bodies flying in its wake, tearing a bloody gash through the encirclement of hundreds of enemy soldiers. I casually killed an enemy captain, seized an armored warhorse, mounted it, spurred it on, and the horse neighed loudly, charging straight out of the enemy's encirclement. Ding! Congratulations, host, on successfully completing the breakout mission. The system has awarded you the 72 styles of unparalleled spear technique. A roar filled my mind, and the final essence of marksmanship was completely mastered. I abandoned my horse and raced through the dense forest along a shortcut, galloping with all my might towards the village. Only one thought occupied my mind: I must protect my family before the flames of war reach the village. On the city wall, Yin Shuo and the defending generals stared blankly at the lone figure who had fought his way through the enemy lines below, and at the enemy corpses strewn across the ground. They were deeply shaken and unable to calm their emotions for a long time. The withered branches and leaves in the dense forest crunched underfoot, and the cold wind lashed their faces like knives. I abandoned the warhorse, which was foaming at the mouth from exhaustion, and galloped wildly along the rugged mountain path, my legs moving like clockwork. The 72 styles of peerless spear techniques that I had just mastered were now warmly absorbing into my mind, nourishing my entire body. My unremarkable hand swept across the battlefield. The collapse of the great Liang dynasty weighed heavily on my heart. The defeated troops of Western Shu, like locusts, swarmed through the area, and no one knew when these bloodthirsty routs would reach Xinjia village. My family consisted not only of my second uncle, but also Lin Shui, Lin Xuan, Su Yunyang, the little girl, and Lin Wan, who had only recently joined the family. They were utterly helpless in this chaotic world, their only support being me. Faster, faster! I urged myself on frantically. Relying on the terrifying support and explosive power brought by my advanced hunting skills, I took a shortcut through the dense forest known only to hunters who hunt year-round, reducing the journey that would normally take half a day to about half a day. When the familiar Xinjia village finally came into view at the foot of the mountain, my tense nerves relaxed slightly. The village was unusually quiet. There was no shouting of battle or the devastation of flames that I had imagined. The houses, scattered in a neat and orderly fashion, stood silently in the night, with wisps of smoke rising gently in the breeze. I took 3 steps at a time and climbed over the earthen slope at the village entrance, rushing straight into the Shin family's courtyard. Squeak! the courtyard gate was suddenly pushed open, and my second uncle, Shinjiani, who was chopping wood in the yard, nearly dropped the axe on his foot. He looked up sharply, and when he saw me, covered in dust and smelling faintly of blood, he was so shocked that his eyes widened, and the axe in his hand clattered to the ground. "Dee? You're back alive? Wasn't it said that the area outside the city was full of rebellious Western Shu soldiers?" Shinjiani quickly came up to me, his hands trembling as he searched my body to make sure I wasn't missing any limbs. His eyes instantly reddened. Hearing the noise, the door to the east room was suddenly pushed open. Lin Shui, Lin Shuang, Xiyunyang, and Lin Wan quickly came out. When they saw me standing safely in the courtyard, their hearts, which had been hanging in suspense, finally settled. Tears welled up in Lin Shui and Lin Shuang's eyes, and they rushed forward, wanting to touch me but hesitant. Su Yunyang, on the other hand, held up a prayer for protection. I looked at a familiar, worried, and tense mouth, and gave a cautious smile. "Second uncle, sisters-in-law, I'm scared. You've all been worried sick." "It's alright, it's good that you're alright." Shinjiani wiped his eyes and nodded repeatedly. "Not long after you left, the villagers heard about the changes outside, and everyone panicked. At that time, the old village head Shin Quan led a few people to the village entrance to scout things out. Seeing that our door was bolted tight, they didn't dare to force their way in. Dee, what are we going to do from now on? The chaos has just begun, and no one can escape unscathed when the nest is overturned. Although Yin Shu is temporarily holding the county town with his troops, the defeated soldiers of Western Shu and the various vassal kings will not let the matter rest. Sooner or later, this remote little place, Xinjia village, will also be swept up in this raging torrent. I turned around, my gaze sweeping over the grain and salt I had brought back from the county town piled up in the yard. My tone was calm, yet it conveyed an undeniable firmness. "Second uncle, panicking won't help. In this world, relying on the government or others is a luxury. Only by holding the knife in your own hand can you protect your family." I paused and said in a deep voice, "Starting tomorrow, I plan to organize the able-bodied men in the village to form a village protection team. In addition to the system defense fortifications around the Collagen area, we will also distribute the weapons and crossbows that were awarded." Shinjiani was slightly taken aback, then slammed his hand down and gritted his teeth, saying, "All right. I'll do whatever you say. In this world, it's better to rely on yourself than on anyone else. Although your second uncle is old, he can still help everyone with logistics." Ding! Detected initial determination to build a career and protect your homeland in this chaotic world. The family/relative system has triggered a new stage mission, striving for supremacy in chaotic times. Within the next month, please successfully transform Xinjia village into an impregnable refuge within 100 miles, and accommodate at least 100 displaced people. Mission rewards: blueprints for refined steel, military formation combination attack technique, 50,000 mua fertile land, and 1,000 taels of gold. The system's prompts rang out again in my mind, providing a solid foundation for my next plan. In the following days, the entire Xinjia village was fully mobilized under my leadership. I dug up a large amount of grain as wages, and all the able-bodied men in the village were ruthlessly inspired. Under my command, tall chevaude-frise and defensive wooden walls were built at the village entrance, and even the several treacherous mountain paths leading into the village were equipped with sophisticated traps and mechanisms. The heavy crossbows and steel spears that were originally intended to intercept wild animals were also distributed to the other well-trained village guards. During this time, Yin Shu sent a trusted messenger with a secret letter. The letter mentioned that although the county town had temporarily blocked the first wave of probing attacks by the defeated Western Shu troops, the town's food supplies were still running low. In the letter, Yin Shu, the military leader of Western Shu, praised my heroic feat of breaking through the enemy lines alone, while also subtly reminding me to be wary of other villages and defeated soldiers taking advantage of the chaos. I replied with a letter, promising to provide some grain to the county town to the best of my ability, and also offering suggestions on how to deal with the weak defenses in several parts of Immortal. When the messenger left, his fear of me was palpable. Half a month later, at dusk, the setting sun was like blood, enveloping the entire Xinjia village in a golden-red halo. I came alone to a cave in the Santiago Mountains behind the hill. I pushed aside the vines and went inside, where I saw the giant white-browed tiger that had once been majestic in the deep mountains, but which I had forcibly taken into my storage space and then released back into the wild, lying on the ground. After being tamed for a while, this beast not only obeyed my every command, but its ferocity gradually subsided, transforming into pure kingly majesty. When it saw me come in, instead of attacking, it obediently stood up and gently rubbed its large head against my leg. I patted its snow-white forehead with a smile, then flipped myself onto its back. "Let's go, I'll show you around our territory." Roar! A deep, majestic tiger roar echoed through the valley, startling countless tigers into flight. I rode a giant white-browed tiger, spear in hand, looking down upon the distant Xinjia village, where smoke was rising from the chimneys. In this cruel and chaotic world where human life is as worthless as grass and warlords fight over every piece of land, I, Zhu Xinai, with the favor of the system, rose from a drowning person who was almost driven to the brink of despair to gradually build my own absolute power by stepping over the corpses of my enemies. The era of upheaval and change was ushered in by Chairman Mao, and my legend began in this spatial village, sweeping across the entire world. The mountain wind howled, carrying the chill of late autumn as it swept across the defenses of Xinjia village. When I rode the enormous white-browed tiger back to the village entrance, the rebuilt sparse deer stockade and defensive barricades had already sprung up. The few able-bodied men from the village who were on night patrol straightened their backs upon seeing me, their eyes filled with reverence and fervor. "Brother Shin!" everyone called out in unison. I nodded slightly, flipped off the tiger's back, patted its forehead, told myself to go find food in the back mountain, and then walked straight into the council hall. The meeting room was actually the main room of my second uncle Xinjiani's house, but it had been made much more spacious. An oil lamp sat on the table, and my second uncle was discussing the accounts for Syria with Lin Shui, Lin Shuang, Su Yunyang, and Lin Wan. The atmosphere in the room immediately relaxed when I entered. "Di Yi, you're finally back." My second uncle pushed several registers in front of me inside. "These past 2 days, more and more refugees have been fleeing from the surrounding area. As per your instructions, we've taken in anyone with a clean background who is willing to work. But at this rate, the village's spare houses and stored grain can only last for another 20 days at most." Lin Shui added softly from the side. "Chen Lang, this afternoon, some ruffians from Yangjia village in the east brought a group of people who wanted to come to our village to eat and drink for free, but second uncle and the village guards scared them away with the crossbows you left behind. However, I'm worried that after they go back, they will collude with the defeated soldiers outside and come to cause trouble." I picked up the teacup and took a sip, a cold glint flashing in my eyes. "They're just the right bunch. They dared to come. It's perfect to use them to establish our authority." I put down my teacup, my tone calm yet undeniably domineering. "Pass the word, starting tomorrow, double the training for the village defense team. Also, exchange the refined steel blueprints rewarded by the system for the village blacksmith, and hurry up and forge them into real military spears and armor. In chaotic times, mercy is for our own people. Against outsiders, might makes right." Su Yu and Lin Wan exchanged a glance and nodded emphatically. They looked at me intently, their eyes filled with a sense of security. In this chaotic world where every day was uncertain, if I hadn't been protecting them, their fate would have been unimaginable. Ding! Initial success detected in gathering popular support and expanding territory. The family/family system has determined that the current phase of the mission has been successfully completed. Mission rewards: blueprints for crafting refined steel, military formation combat techniques, 50,000 mua fertile land, and 1,000 taels of gold have been stored in unlimited storage space. The system's notification sounds were perfectly timed as intended. With a thought, I imprinted the thick blueprints for manufacturing refined steel and the combined military formation techniques into my mind, while simultaneously taking inventory of the assets within my spatial dimension. The deeds to 50,000 acres of fertile land and the gleaming gold were enough to ensure that Xinjia village would be completely invincible in the chaotic world to come. The next morning, just as dawn was breaking, the sounds of galloping hooves and shouts of cursing came from outside the village. I pushed open the door and strode towards the village entrance. Along the main road at the village entrance, a large group of 70 or 80 people stood in a dark mass. Leading them was Ma San, the notorious bully from Yanjia village who had been driven away not long ago. This guy had somehow colluded with more than a dozen groups of defeated soldiers from Western Shu. He was dressed in tattered uniforms, carrying a blood-stained battle knife, and was arrogant and domineering with a face covered in blood. "Xin Yi! You greenhorn, get out here right now!" Ma San, hiding behind a burly, defeated soldier from the Western Shu army, shouted arrogantly. "Don't think you're so great just because you're the tyrant of the village. This is a military officer from the Western Shu army. If you know what's good for you, hand over all your village's grain and pretty women, and kneel down to give them 3 kowtows. Otherwise, I'll raze your Shin family village to the ground today, leaving not a single chicken or dog alive." When the newly taken-in refugees heard this, they turned pale with fright, and some of the more timid ones even began to tremble. I walked out of the crowd with a cold smile, holding the steel spear upside down in both hands, and chased after Ma San and the defeated squad leader with eyes that looked like I was about to die. "You bunch of defeated soldiers, do you even deserve to run wild in Xinjia village?" I said coldly. Seeing that I was alone, the deserter sergeant from Western Shu flew into a rage. He brandished his sword and laughed bitterly. "Damn it, you pretty boy looking for death. Brothers, charge! Cut off his head. Kill all the men, and take the women with you." A dozen or so defeated soldiers from Western Shu charged forward with strange cries. I barely lifted my eyelids, pushed off with my feet, and shot forward like an arrow. My figure weaved through the crowd, and the 72 styles of peerless spear techniques erupted instantly. Pft! 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 A cold glint flashed, and screams rose and fell. In a single glance, the leading fleeing soldiers didn't even have time to touch the hem of my clothes before their throats were precisely pierced. Warm blood splattered on the yellow dirt road, a horrifying sight. Seeing that the situation was not good, the squad leader's eyes flashed with fear, and he turned to attack. With a flick of my wrist, the spear in my hand flew out like a meteor. Boom! The long blade pierced his back, and the immense force pinned him to an old tree by the roadside, making him utterly dead. The remaining ruffian from Yangjia village, Ma San, was terrified. His legs went weak and he collapsed to his knees, a warm, pungent stench of urine filling the air. He frantically kowtowed and begged for mercy. "Master Chen, spare me! Master Chen, spare me!" It was all because Ma San was blinded by greed. I walked up to him and looked down at him. "Take him back, Village Labor Protection Team, and deal with him according to the rules." After this battle, Xinjia village's reputation completely shook the surrounding area. No one in the surrounding vast villages dared to harbor any covetous thoughts anymore, and some even began to bring small gifts to submit to the authorities. Several days later, another urgent military situation arose in the direction of the county seat. The main force of the Western Shu army had assembled and launched a general offensive against the county seat. Yin Shu led his troops in a desperate defense, and the battle was extremely fierce, with the city's food supplies running out. I stood in the council hall of Xinjia village, looking at the map with a deep gaze. When the nest is overturned, how can anything be spared? Once the county town falls, Xinjia village will certainly not be able to hold on either. I turned around, looked at my other second uncle and several wives, and said in a deep voice, "Prepare the horses, I'm going to the county town. This time, it's not just for Yin Shu, but also for ourselves." A heavy, leaden-gray cloud hung over the county town, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and blood. When I rode that giant, snow-white tiger, leading hundreds of elite guards from Xinjia village to the outskirts of the county town, the scene before me was horrifying. A large section of the northwest corner of the city wall had been destroyed by enemy catapults, with bricks and stones scattered everywhere. Broken weapons and gruesome bloodstains were everywhere on the city wall. Thousands upon thousands of Western Shu rebels, like a black tide, swarmed and attacked the city wall in waves. On the city wall, Viscount Inshaw was personally overseeing the battle, wielding his long sword. He was covered in blood, his armor shattered, and his former refined demeanor was gone, replaced by the brutality and determination of someone who had survived countless battles. "Kill! Hold on! We must not let the rebels climb the city!" Inshaw roared hoarsely, stabbing an enemy soldier who had just climbed the city wall down with his sword. However, the defending forces were already limited in number, and after being cut off from supplies for several days, their physical strength had long been exhausted. As the rebels pushed two huge siege engines toward the city gate with a rumble, it was only a matter of time before the city fell. I reined in the tiger beneath me, my eyes as cold as knives. "All Xinjia village guards, listen to my command!" I channeled my inner strength, my voice booming like thunder across the battlefield. "Charge with me and tear these rebels to shreds!" As soon as I finished speaking, I squeezed my legs together around the tiger's belly, and the white-browed tiger let out a roar that shook the mountains and forests, transforming into a white lightning bolt that charged straight into the camp of the Western Shu rebels. "What kind of monster is that?" The enemy soldiers at the forefront didn't even see who was coming before being smashed to pieces by the tiger's massive paws. I sat atop the tiger's back, my gleaming steel spear leaving a trail of afterimages as I unleashed my 72 unparalleled spear techniques, moving with unparalleled speed and devastation. Each thrust claimed several enemy lives, carving a bloody path through the dense rebel ranks. Hundreds of elite troops from Xinjia village then arrived. They were well equipped, and, with the combined attack techniques from the system's reward, their morale was high. They instantly and completely breached the unsuspecting flank of the rebel army. Just as Yin Shuo was in despair atop the city wall, he suddenly heard deafening shouts of battle and the roar of tigers. Upon closer inspection, he was immediately moved to tears. "It's Brother Shin! Brother Shin has brought reinforcements to our rescue!" Yin Shuo shouted, raising his arms. "Brothers, the time to fight back has come! Follow me and charge!" The morale of the defending troops soared. Taking advantage of the chaos in the rear of the rebel army, the city gates were suddenly opened. Yin Shuo personally led the remaining elite troops out of the city and attacked from both sides with my troops. They routed the attacking Western Shu rebel army, who fled in disarray. After several hours of bloody fighting, the enemy forces outside the city were finally completely defeated, leaving behind a trail of corpses as they fled in disarray into the distant mountains and forests. The setting sun, like blood, dyed the entire battlefield a tragic red. Inside the temporary government office in the county town, candlelight flickered. Insho picked up a cup of warm tea, solemnly raised it to me, his eyes filled with gratitude for surviving such a disaster. "Brother Shin, if you hadn't arrived in time today, not only would this county town have been lost, but my entire Yin family would have been doomed. I will never forget this kindness and virtue." I picked up my teacup and gently clinked it against his, saying calmly, "Brother Yin, there's no need for such formality. I understand the principle of if the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. Although the rebels have retreated, their strength is undamaged, and they will surely retaliate even more fiercely. What is the current situation of the city's food supplies?" Yin Shuo sighed with a wry smile, put down his teacup, and said with a solemn expression, "To be honest, the grain reserves that were originally stockpiled in the city ran out a few days ago. Although we seized some from the enemy camp this time, it is only enough to support the tens of thousands of refugees and garrison troops in the city for 3 days. If we cannot raise more grain, I'm afraid there will be a mutiny in the city before the enemy attacks." Hearing this, I nodded slightly. This was exactly what I expected. I took out a token with a special mark from my pocket, pushed it in front of Yin Shuo, and said in a deep voice, "Brother Ian, don't panic. This time I came not only with troops, but also with enough resources from the village. I have secretly stockpiled enough grain and salt to feed the entire city for half a year in a hidden place outside the city, which is enough to solve the immediate crisis." Ian Shaw suddenly stood up, looking at me in shock. "Half a year's worth of food? Brother Shin, in this chaotic world, how did you manage to do that?" "You don't need to ask that." I stood up and patted him on the shoulder. "Tomorrow morning, I will arrange for people to transport the grain into the city in batches for delivery. As for your magistrate Huang Tong, who has always harbored resentment and colluded with foreign enemies, I will also take care of him for you." Yin Shu was taken aback. "Huang Tong? What happened to him?" I sneered. "Just now, when we were fighting outside the city, this corrupt official and a few of his trusted confidants tried to open the north gate to surrender to the rebels, but I just casually shot him in the head. His body is hanging outside the city tower for all to see." Upon hearing this, Yin Shu not only didn't blame him, but clapped his hands in delight. "Well done! This kind of traitorous parasite should have been torn to pieces long ago." After resolving the immediate crisis in the county town, I didn't linger there. My thoughts were always with my wife and family in Xinjia village, who were anxiously awaiting my safe return. That night, I rode the white-browed tiger, and by the bright moonlight, I set off alone on my journey back to Xinjia village. The moonlight was like water, and its silvery white glow spilled onto the winding mountain path, casting my shadow long. Beneath me, the white-browed tiger moved with steady, elegant steps, its fur gleaming faintly in the night. After days of bloody battles and arduous journeys, the air still held the chilling atmosphere unique to chaotic times, yet my heart remained outwardly calm. The crisis in the county town was temporarily averted. Huang Tong had been executed, the food supply was secured, and Xinjia village was beginning to take shape. In this dog-eat-dog world, I had finally truly established myself. Roar! The tiger seemed to sense my thoughts, let out a low growl, and involuntarily increased its speed. In less than an hour, the familiar villagers became clearly visible in the darkness. The defensive wooden walls of the new town stood tall, and the village guards on night patrol, spears in hand, watched intently as victory was within reach. When they approached and I saw him riding a giant tiger, they immediately stepped forward to salute, their eyes filled with fanaticism. "Brother Shin is back!" The news spread like wildfire, and by the time I got off the tiger and walked to the courtyard gate, the wooden door had already creaked open from the inside. My second uncle, Shinjiani, was wearing an old cotton coat and clutching a series of thick wooden sticks. When he saw me clearly by the light of the lantern, his tense face instantly relaxed, and he let out a long sigh of relief. "You little rascal, you're finally back! With the fighting so fierce outside, the girls and I couldn't sleep at home all night, afraid that something might happen to you." The door to the east room opened, and Lin Shui, Lin Shuang, Suyu, and Lin Wan quickly came out to greet them. Although they didn't speak, their slightly reddened eyes and sorrowful expressions revealed all their worry and longing. Lin Shui was holding a bowl of warm rice porridge in her hand and said softly, "Chen Lang, it's windy outside, come inside and warm up." As I gazed at this heartwarming scene, a surge of warmth welled up within me. In this cold and cruel chaotic world, this dilapidated little house is my most cherished haven. Second uncle, sisters-in-law, I'm sorry to have worried you. I took the bowl of porridge from Lin Shui and drank it all in one gulp. I smiled and said, "The situation in the county town has been completely resolved. The rebels in Western Shu have been driven back, and that corrupt official Huang Tong has been executed. From now on, our Xinjia village will not only be safe, but our lives will also get better and better." Upon hearing this news, everyone in the courtyard finally breathed a sigh of relief. Uncle Er rubbed his hands together with joy, repeatedly saying, "Heaven has eyes." In the days that followed, Xinjia village celebrated a rare period of rest and recuperation. With the 50,000 mu of fertile land deeds and high-yield crop seeds awarded by the system, I managed to cultivate vast tracts of rich farmland around the village. Under my guidance, and with both myself and the displaced people fulfilling our respective duties, spring planting and autumn harvesting, though agricultural tasks, blossomed with vitality. What was once a desolate and dilapidated village has now been transformed by me into a secluded paradise that people for miles around yearn for. Ding! Initial successful recovery of the masses and stabilization of both sides have been detected. Xinjia village has officially become a super safe haven in the chaotic world. The system's ultimate main quest is perfectly completed. Ultimate rewards: a complete package of Grandmaster level skills, unparalleled martial arts inheritance, 10,000 taels of gold, and permanent land contract access have all been credited to your account. In my imagination, the system's voice, tinged with a cheerful mechanical tone, announced the successful completion of a phase. With the fusion of all Grandmaster level skills, I could sense that my physique, spirit, and control over this world had reached the pinnacle of humanity. In this turbulent era, I was no longer an ant bound by fate, but a persistent chess player. The afternoon sun was shining brightly. I had some free time, so I sat on a stone bench in the courtyard, whittling wood chips and teasing Su Yunyang, the little girl who was already sweetly calling me Daddy. Lin Shui and Lin Shuang were helping to sort the newly harvested grain, while Lin Wan was quietly mending clothes. The air was filled with a sense of tranquility and peace. Uncle Shinjiani, with a pipe dangling from his lips, watched this scene with a smile. He took a puff of his pipe and sighed. The world we live in now feels like a dream. Back when your parents passed away, I was really afraid that our Shin family line would end. I'm so glad that you've come this far. I looked up, my gaze lingering on the distant horizon beyond the village, where I could vaguely see refugees hurrying along the official road. Second uncle, this is just the beginning. I handed the carved wood carving to the little girl in my arms, my tone calm and firm. Although the old Liang dynasty has been destroyed, the world is still divided among various warlords, and the war is far from over. In this chaotic world, we can never protect our families. Relying on just Xinjia village is not enough. Uncle Air exhaled a puff of smoke and nodded heavily. No matter what decision you make, Uncle Air and the whole village will always follow you. As the sun sets, its golden rays bathe the entire Xinjia village in a dazzling glow. I stood up, gripped the long sword at my waist, and looked at my smiling wives and the peaceful villagers beside me. In this chaotic world, like a game of chess, I, Qingyi, have already made my move, and I am determined to forge a path to the heavens, protecting this land and my beloved ones, ensuring eternal peace.